Soulcalibur, baby! I love this franchise. I can't think of any fighting game that I'd hold up to a higher standard. This series has gripped me from day one back in 2003, and it has only tightened its hold on me as I've aged. I've accumulated somewhere around 2,000 hours, which is 83 days, so just shy of 3 months of pure playtime. Sounds intimidating, sure, but when I consider how much time was hardly spent knowing the game's system and how much it was spent not actively trying to improve or learn, I realized that it should only take you about 10 to 30 hours to get to a skill level high enough to thoroughly enjoy the game and never stop craving it. Most games these days take about 20 to 60 hours of your time anyway, so it's not too bad all things considered. Soulcalibur's mechanics are easy to grasp, but it can be hard to get everything down, and there's certainly an ocean of depth for the hardcores. The concept flows well, and it's perfect for fluid and intense 60-second bursts of combat that seamlessly switch between offense and defense, where any one action can turn the tide, and fights are short enough that you'll always be ready for just one more. This guide will be for the beginners and the people who would like to give Soulcalibur a try or think that fighting games might be too hard and they fell for that meme. I'm going to make getting into Soulcalibur easy for you. Let's start your tale of souls and swords, eternally retold. Here are the basics. At its core, the game can be simplified and categorized by its attacks. Attacks strike your character at 3 different heights: high, medium, and low. Because this is a 3D fighter, there are 2 other attributes we need to consider, and that's vertical and horizontal. Soulcalibur, being a 3D fighter, allows players to move around in 8 directions by just simply holding the control stick to the desired place, or you can double tap to move quickly. This is called the 8-way run system. Do note that while moving, your attacks may change, so don't be surprised if you're hitting up and triangle maybe, and suddenly you're doing a different move that isn't what you thought up and triangle is supposed to be. But we'll get back to movement at some other point. Let's focus on the attacks again. Verticals tend to be strong and are often your combo starters, but you can sidestep them. Horizontals, on the other hand, tend to be quicker and do less damage than verticals, but they limit your opponent's movement options by catching them if they try to sidestep. Every move has a hitbox that's either vertical or horizontal, as well as an impact height of high, medium, or low. Highs and mediums can be guarded just by pressing guard. Highs can be ducked under by holding guard and down. This is also how you block lows. Here's where the rock, paper, scissors comes in. You have highs, which can be ducked or guarded. You have mediums, which can be guarded. And then you have lows, where you can guard or you can jump over them. While many other fighting games would have you hit up to jump, in Soulcalibur, because of the 8-way run system, you'll have to hold guard and then hit up in order to jump. You can also hit up along with any one of the face buttons, and you'll do a jumping attack. Some people will call this crushing lows when you do it to avoid a low. Some moves even have built-in tech steps or tech crouches that give you an evasive edge. Now you might be thinking, mediums seem to have an upper hand compared to everything else. Well, while it might seem like that on the surface, there's a bit more balance to consider, but we'll ignore that for now and just stick to the basics. So let's review. We have 4 basic attributes to consider for attacks. There's height of contact, there's speed, there's hitbox, there's the damage, and then there's the plane of contact, additional to highs, mediums, and lows, that's vertical and horizontal. Soulcalibur is as much about offensive play as it is defensive. I'll explain using the PlayStation button layout, but most controllers are easily translatable since the positions of the face buttons are the same. X is our guard button. While standing in a neutral position, simply press X and you'll guard any incoming highs or mediums. Pressing down on X will put you in a crouched position where you'll block lows and duck highs. Luckily, no moves do chip damage, that is, cut through your defense, so guarding will always keep your health intact. But watch out for those flame moves. These are unblockables. Typically they're slow and extremely vertical, so get ready to sidestep them or interrupt your opponent with a quick attack. Grabs also ignore your guard, but thankfully all the basic grabs in this game are highs, so you can duck them. There are only 4 characters with non-high grabs in the entire series. Rock and Astaroth are going to be your biggest threat, since they have plenty of crouch grabs and ground grabs. Starting with Soulcalibur IV, a guard gauge was added to the game. Guard too many powerful hits, like the electric break attacks, and a guard break occurs. In Soulcalibur IV, these would lead to insta-kill moves. In Soulcalibur V, guard breaks just open you up for a guaranteed hit. So how do you defend against that? Introducing Guard Impacts, GI for short. This maneuver distinguishes Soulcalibur from other fighters by giving the defensive side of gameplay some much needed balance and fun factor. In Soulcalibur 4 on down, you'll press guard and forward, or guard and backward as an attack is about to hit you, while in Soulcalibur 5 you'll hit back and R2 at the cost of some meter. To go back to the guard gauge, typically in 5 you'll have about 9 lightning or break attacks to guard before you'll suffer a guard break. Note the yellow flashing and then the red flashing, indicating guard break danger. Outside of protecting your guard gauge, GIs work as an excellent defense option against predictable attacks and spam onslaughts. GIs, aside from repelling an attack, will throw your opponent off and put them at a slight disadvantage. They typically won't be open for a free hit, but they will have a small amount of time in which they can only guard or try and GI you back. This is where the mind games and strategy comes in. It's also a good way to get your riskier moves out safely. You can attack and you can guard. Awesome. Now, it's time to prime you with the game's language. Oh, why can't I just say forward, square plus triangle? Because I could say 6, A plus B much quicker. And in a fight, you don't have any time to waste and precision is key. Aside from its external utility, the games themselves do not cater to your controller's icons. The move list uses the language of A, B, K, G. This is because Soulcalibur was originally an arcade game and the letters correspond to their cabinet mappings. Again, I'll use PlayStation here. A equals square, B equals triangle, K equals circle, and G equals X. Now, this sounds like a bit of a nuisance, but trust me, it's not too tough to remember because each face button is tied to a predictable type of move. A's are always horizontals, B's are always verticals, K's are always your kicks and body hits, and G is for guard. K and G are easy to remember because they have a nice mnemonic device for you. K is kicks, G is guard. Now for something that the community has ascribed to, the control stick layout. For this, we've grown accustomed to numbering each direction on the control stick, starting with 1 is down and back, 2 is down, 3 down forward, so on and so on. Refer to the chart. Keep in mind the notation is left-centric. If you end up on the right side of the screen, you have to mirror the numbers. If you were to hit 1 while on the right, you'll actually be inputting 3. Luckily, 2, 5, and 8 are always the same. This may sound complicated, but it'll quickly become second nature. At the very least, just keep A, B, K, G in mind at first. Once you have this system down in your head, discussing the game becomes significantly quicker and makes visualizing moves and combos in your head easier. It also makes them easier to remember and communicate. Down, forward, triangle, and then down, forward triangle becomes 3B, 2, 3, 6B. By hitting A plus G or B plus G, you do a close range high attack that initiates a throw. Now these throws usually do 40 to 60 damage and often toss your opponent to the ground at the end. This puts them in a pretty bad spot. The way you break throws is you either hit A or B corresponding to which input your opponent did. Now sadly there's no giveaway unless you just look at your buddy's hands when he inputs the grab. So grabs are always a 50-50 unless you start noticing your opponent's pattern. Grabs serve the purpose of breaking those tricky defenders and keep your opponent scared of the threat of their guard being less reliable. And some grabs also switch sides or even ring out in certain directions. Break them or duck those baddies. Just remember not to get too angry about them. Nobody likes a crybaby just as much as nobody likes a grab-asser. Don't treat the game like it's always meant to be won either. When you lose, it means your strategy wasn't good enough. Try and change up what moves you use, when you attack, and try to watch your opponent just as much as you focus on your own actions. This can be hard right away, but it's a necessary part of having a good strategy in the game and being a good player. Every move has at least one way around it. To wind down, the game is an endless test of skill and quick wits once you get the simple mechanics down. Sucker some friends, introduce some friends to it, and you'll have a never-ending well of adrenaline-inducing matches and loud shouts of victory as you prove who's the wiliest coyote. That should do it for the basics. I'll see you next time on your road to becoming a master on the stage of history.